Hello and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Wednesday, May the 1st. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack show, and we just talk about some of the issues of the day. So Walter, the election is coming up, the provincial election. It's in a couple of weeks. I'd like to talk a bit about the role of the media and the election. In my opinion, I mean, if you ask the question, who's going to win the next election, the real answer is whoever the media chooses. Because when you think about it, all we really know about what's going on, for the most part, is what we get in the media. And we get that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year after year after year. They have such control over the information we get on their television stations, and I'm talking about the corporations who own them, their television stations, their radio stations, and their newspapers. And what if the media wasn't really giving us the straight goods, but really was manipulating us in order to get elected the politicians who they want to get elected? I think that's very possible. In fact, I think it's exactly what happens.
Well, it's not impossible to get elected just having lots of integrity and lots of great ideas and getting out there and going door to door and getting support, and it's possible, but it's a lot harder than if you just simply toe the corporate line, and it gets a lot easier. You don't have to work as hard.
Well, let's imagine what happened if you and I happened to be running, let's say, one of the two major political parties, either the Liberals or the NDP. And we said, we're going to raise taxes on the corporations, back to where they were 10 years ago, and really take back all of those big tax cuts that the corporations and the 1% got over the last 11 or 12 years of the liberal, and those cuts are now costing the province about $6 billion a year. So we're just going to go back to the same rates as we had 10 or 11 years ago, or even the average rate for provinces in Canada. Even the average rate would give us taxation, would give us another, I think, about $3 to $3.5 billion a year, enough so that people wouldn't have to pay MSP. Right? Enough so we could put a lot of money into schools, a lot of money into improving our healthcare system, not the same old pharmaceutical corporation-run healthcare system that we got, but really improving things. Cut ferry fares, be more money for the people at the bottom. All of that could be done very easily. And if we were a party who said we were going to do that, I think the media would immediately find a scandal or just completely ignore us, one or the other, because they're not going to allow that thing to happen, because they are the ones who benefit. I don't mean the people who work in the media, but the owners of the media.
Yeah, I think as long as, the public's opinion is being controlled by large media outlets. The thing is, you have to remember, though, Jack, is with the new media, for instance, what's happening online. I go online to get my information most of the time now, and it's also influenced by the rich and the powerful, but not so much so. And also you can go into blogs and you can find real critics of different issues and get the information. So more and more people are doing that. So I think you have these competing trends where there's a trend towards the public just be getting less and less information and less informed. And then there's another trend of a segment of the population getting more and more informed and more in tune. And there's a wider dichotomy between those two groups now.
Well, I'm not following things very closely in the election, and I'm still not planning to vote. But I have heard over and over again Premier Christy Clark saying that elect us, we are going to eliminate the debt, and we're the party of private sector success, and we will take care of things. And especially, I think she said over and over again, we're going to reduce the debt. But if you look at, and the media allows her to say that without, I mean, bursting out laughing, which is what they should do, because the numbers, the actual real numbers, tell an exact opposite story. I don't remember what it was when the NDP left power, but let's say 30 billion in debt. The Liberals, I believe, have doubled it to maybe 60 billion in debt. And plus, they've put on top of that another 60 to 80 billion dollars in long-term contractual obligations, things like run-of-river power that they've signed us into for decades to come, where we have to buy power at many, many times what we could generate it for ourselves, and it's power we don't even need, but we have to buy it.
You know, I went online today to try to figure out, well, how much electricity are we generating in this province, and how much are we consuming? Very hard to figure that out, you know. There's no straightforward answer on that. But I've been in the electrical industry for 40 years, and you know, I've heard and talked to many people about it, and there's lots of people saying that we have a generating capacity that's 50% about more than what we need right now. Projections that we need in the future are based upon on faulty data, that the BC Hydro was projecting energy consumption in the 2005, 2008 range when there was a growth era. And it's, you know, consumption over the last 4 or 5 years has been flat, but they're still projecting these massive increases in consumption. It's not based upon reality. And they're saying we need these extra energy sources like Site C Dam and stuff, then we really don't need it. The only thing you could possibly do with the power is to sell it to Californians or sell it to America.
Or if nobody wants to buy it, which is very possible, then I think BC Hydro could very well be bankrupted and privatized. I mean, isn't that part of the plan? Let's privatize BC Hydro. Why should the public own this valuable resource? That stuff is happening around the world. And that's why we need an honest media that is independent of powerful interests like the corporations. We need a media that's working for us and is going to be telling us the truth as it is, not the truth as benefits somebody who doesn't want us to know the truth.
Yeah.
When these long-term run-of-river electrical power projects were being built and the contract signed, that was kept completely secret. I mean, I heard rumors on the internet and from friends, but never anything in the media. That should have been front page news. Government, liberal government signing us into tens of billions of dollars of debt. Now, the Premier comes on in the debate and says, hey, we're the ones who are going to get you out of debt. And the media allows it to happen.
Well, it's so ridiculous because it's like buying timeshares or something. At the end of the next 30 or 40 years, after you pay all those fees and all those contracts, you still don't own the infrastructure. They're going to renegotiate, and they're going to probably get a whole bunch of money again. So it's such a bad deal that the whole run-of-river concept was such a bad deal. It was an invention of the Campbell government saying we have to have energy sufficiency in British Columbia when we already did. And it was just completely based upon so many false assumptions. And it happens that a lot of people made a lot of money on that deal, Jack, and a lot of people, the average Joe, the people like you and I, are going to be paying higher electricity rates for the rest of our lives because of these guys. And it's not fair. And I think, you know, this is one thing that the next government could do. You know, the NDP is not saying that they're going to reopen these contracts and renegotiate them. I think you could easily prove that these contracts were on the government side were illegal. That because they were secret and because they gave so much away, that it's just not reasonable to assume that that was a fair deal, that something was done that was really illegal, and we should reopen some of those contracts. Maybe that person that did that negotiation was doing it on behalf of their superiors, but I don't know if anybody's going to go to jail. But the thing is, it's very obvious that it's just not fair to us. We shouldn't have to pay these billions and billions of dollars that are going to go right out of the province, by the way. Just spend it and send it out of the province.
And some of the biggest corporations in the world are the ones who own these run-of-river projects. And do we really want to be giving them our money for the next 20, 30, 40 years for nothing? I mean, who was our government working for at the time? I don't think they were working for us. I don't think the governments work for us on any issues, really. And this is the bigger problem. You know, one is the fact that the media is owned by these corporations, but I think the governments work for them as well. So again, it's that lack of democracy. We, the citizens of this province and this country, have become totally irrelevant in what goes on here. We're just here to be manipulated and do the work.
Trying to figure it out. I mean, it's so hard to figure out exactly why they're doing certain things. And, you know, why is it the NDP is really having such a hard time with the looking at the smart meter issue? And why are they having such a hard time of understanding just how undemocratic the way this was imposed the same way as the HST? They seem to not like the HST. Why are they having such a hard time with getting behind the citizens to get a fair deal and not to be gouged by these new smart meters? Well, one of the answers would be that they need the money. Hydro needs the money, and a good way to trick us into paying higher fees is this new smart metering, which will eventually become time of use billing. And you're supposed to cook your dinner at 3 o'clock in the morning or something and do your wash off peak. But the thing is that in the end, I can't say nobody's going to do it, but most of the population can't do that. It's just going to mean we're going to pay higher and higher rates for our electricity. It's just not fair, and the NDP should be coming to bat for us and saying, no, let's look at this whole smart meter program again too. It's just not fair to the public, but we're not hearing that.
And then it's like ping pong. Then it goes back to the media because it's not an issue in the media. You read through the media day after day, and I think that's a fundamentally important issue, as are many others, like the big tax cuts, the destruction of the environment of this planet. I mean, this is picking up speed in so many ways, and yet you read the media, you watch the media, it's never mentioned. So it's this back and forth between the media, the politicians, what do we people really want? I mean, about 10 years ago, all of a sudden, one day in the newspapers, there appeared this headline. I can't imagine how it ever got in, but it was, Canadians want major oil company nationalized. Somebody did a poll, one of the big polling companies, and the result was like about 80% of Canadians wanted us to nationalize one of the big oil companies. Well, I think that's a great idea. And, you know, we should have have our own bank as well. But that never happened. You know, it was in the media for a day and then disappeared, never to be mentioned in the next 10 years.
If you think back in the 70s, Trudeau did that. They called it Petro-Canada. And
that's right.
And I was in Alberta at the time, and it was just, they wanted to lynch him for that. The public were whipped up into a frenzy, and they couldn't see the value in that. I thought it was a pretty darn good idea. And
every other country has a national oil company.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? Why give all the money to Exxon and Shell and Chevron and all the rest of them? These monster oil corporations that roam the world, destroying everything in their path.
Yeah.
Don't we want to do things a little bit better? But you can't. The corporations will not allow it.
Well, they try to keep us from doing it. I mean, there's a lot of good things that can still happen, but we have to understand the game that we're involved in, and we have to understand the players and the power and the pressures that are putting against us, in order to understand why it's so hard to get something done. But we still can get things done, and good things can be done for the environment and for the public. But we just have to simply be aware of those pressures and the subtle manipulations that happen to us with the use of language and in the media to sway us into another point of view.
Well, you know, we've got to, you know, a lot of people like myself don't trust or believe the media, and I think there's nothing more important than that. Just you can't believe, I mean, I would say you can't believe anything they tell you, because in my lifetime I've been lied to by the media so many times about the most fundamentally important issues like war and peace, our health, the economy. I mean, they just manipulate us.
Well, it's almost on everything. I mean, I was one of those guys that was a pretty happy person, and when I started asking questions about almost every issue, going back through all the major wars in the last century and looking at all the major events that have happened, there was always seemed to be an agenda going on by others manipulating those events and willing to let a lot of people suffer and a lot of deaths to happen, environmental destruction. You know, militarism itself is so massively destructive. It's the most polluting thing you can do. And, you know, globally, military activities accounts for like 10 or 12% of the pollution in the world.
So all the issues, I think, it's almost like the issues are the symptoms. You know, we're worried about the environment, we're worried about the pipelines, we're worried about the homeless, we're worried about keeping our jobs. But those are the symptoms. I think the real problem is we don't have democracy in this country. If we did have more democracy, then at least we Canadians could start to build the country that we want to build. And I think we would do a much better job for ourselves than is being done to us by the people running the show.
The other part of it, I mean, is that the regular citizens aren't demanding democracy, Jack. They're home watching the hockey game or doing something else.
Which is where we're going to be right after this.
That's right. But the thing is that, you know, we're not educated. It's not part of our culture to be critical thinkers when we're young. We're not taught to be a little bit brave, let's say, of actually sticking up for what you believe in. You may not be certain about an issue, but you might hear enough about something to be willing to take a political stand. I think this takes a certain amount of courage to do that. We're not trained to do that in our society. We're trained to go along with the flow and not to have opinions, basically, you know.
And those are important issues. We Canadians have got to start to do better. We've got to build our own democracy. We've got to fight against the people who won't let us have democracy.
Yeah.
We've got to see the importance of democracy and of a free press. Anyways, enough of that. What's your issue?
Well, you know, I two or three things that sort of have me thinking about things. I mean, of course, the bombing in Boston is a lingering thing for me. Feeling very, very uneasy about the whole scenario in Boston. So many unanswered questions. And I think for me, when I was talking about with the friends and family and others about the bombing and, you know, getting sort of a feedback, and basically it's almost this pressure of what happens when you just don't accept the official story, that there's just too many things wrong with it. Your common sense is telling you there's just too many holes in it. But if you don't accept the official story, where do you go with that? I mean, it's kind of terrifying to think, oh, I have to really fundamentally challenge the law enforcement agencies. Could they possibly be working in collusion with these bombers? Is it possible they had foreknowledge of the event? You know, because once you start going down that rabbit hole, you can't see where you're going to land. And it's a little bit frightening, and a lot of people just don't want to go there. They'd much rather just believe the official story or just forget about it. But I think, you know, you mentioned several points that really things that are inconsistent with that story that really makes you wonder exactly what did happen.
Yeah, as I said about an earlier issue, I just don't believe officialdom anymore about just about anything. So I don't believe the official story just based on that. You know, there is the issue of, you know, it's on Boston television, somebody being arrested, supposedly the older brother being arrested because a person was arrested at the scene of the shootout. And, it's like it's on television that one time, but the media pretends it never happened. The police have been asked who was the person. They won't produce the person. There clearly was a person arrested. Why won't that person be produced? Was it the older brother? In fact, that's certainly the thought that a lot of people are having. And that's one of many.
Well, they had bomb-sniffing dogs on site. It was reported that they were running a bomb drill at the marathon.
And the police will not officially say yes or no.
They won't answer that question. Now, you have to say, well, why won't you just say, yeah, we were running a drill, it happened, people saw it. To not answer the question just puts so many concerns into our mind exactly what was going on there. And, of course, you can't forget about the other incidents of bombings, and particularly 9/11. 75% of New Yorkers believe the government of the United States had foreknowledge about the attack in September 11th. So it's not like it's such a strange thing. I mean, most of the people in New York believe that their own government was in some way or other involved with that incident. So, it's just millions of people are wondering what's going on.
And people are killed, people are injured, people's lives, and you just don't know what to believe. Who do you think here in Victoria, in the upcoming election, in Victoria Beacon Hill, which is where this studio is and where I live, Carol James, longtime NDP MLA and former leader of the party, is running against Jane Sturck. When Jane first announced she was going to run in this area, I thought, you can't possibly win. But now I think she does have a possibility of winning. What do you think?
Well, Jane and I differ a lot on issues, and that's just the way it is. I mean, everybody is allowed to have an opinion. She happens to be the leader of the Green Party, and I think she's taken the party in some directions I don't like at all. But she performs quite well in the public. She did well in the debate. She is intelligent, and I think she would make a good member of the legislature. In general, because people don't agree with me, I can't write them all off. On the other hand, or not on the other hand, also, Carol James is a fine person. I respect her, and she has a long history of integrity. I haven't agreed with her on every issue, of course, but as people involved in politics goes, Carol is again would be a good member of the legislature. So that will be an interesting battle. I have such differences.
I'm going to throw something into that battle because I got a press release from the NDP about mining and natural gas, which is fracking. So here it is. I'll just read a few lines from it. The NDP is saying yes to mining and yes to natural gas, says Adrian Dix in a press release issued up north. The NDP says that economic jobs and economic growth in the north and interior will be driven by success in mining and natural gas. Now, that's not what I want. I mean, this is why I'm kind of not voting, and I don't think this is clear to people that the NDP is going around saying, "Hey, we're all in favor of mining. We're all in favor of natural gas." And fracking, of all things. We've got to move our economy away from causing environmental disaster. We've got to be able to live, because we're going to destroy the planet. We are destroying the planet. I mean, is there any question about that?
Well, it's funny that Adrian's saying that when he's in Prince George, and you don't quite hear that same tone when he's in Victoria. So, take for what it is, but really it's a big problem. I think the NDP desperately want to get elected, and politics being what they are, people they'll make promises and they'll say things that they may not follow through with as in spades as much as you'd think they would. But you know, fracking is a very, very profoundly polluting process. They inject chemicals into the ground that are just a mass of awful things that they pump into the ground to get the gas out. In the meantime, there's a lot of water involved in the water tables and everything that this is all going through. It's been shown time and time again to destroy water tables. And they're not talking about this a lot in British Columbia, but you know, we're on quite a major fault line. And believe it or not, fracking has been shown to increase the events of earthquakes. So
Walter,
we could
we're out
have
of time.
some major catastrophes because of it.
Yeah. We've got to do better. I just wish more democracy and more of a free press. I'd be a much more happy camper. Thank you, Walter, and thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.